cop disrespects black FBI agent. 2 minutes later, he's the one in handcuffs. Ma'am, I'm not gonna ask you again. Step out of the car. Now. The barrel of the officer's gun hovered just inches from her face. His eyes, sharp and mean under the brim of his hat, didn't blink. His knuckles were white around the grip. For a split second, the night stood still. Cold, quiet. Then, from somewhere behind the flashing red and blue lights, a voice shouted, "I'm recording this! Don't touch her!" And just like that, everything changed. 2 minutes ago, Special Agent Brielle Monroe was just another black woman pulled over on a dark Virginia highway. Now, the same officer who barked orders at her was standing on the edge of a career-ending disaster, and he didn't even know it yet. Rewind. It was a little past 11:30 p.m. when Brielle exited the secure parking lot at the Northern Intelligence Briefing Center just outside Quantico. The day had been long, stacked with back-to-back briefings about a classified cyber attack investigation. As Deputy Director of the FBI, she was no stranger to exhaustion. Still, this kind of night left its mark, the kind that didn't fade with a good night's sleep. Her black Lexus sedan moved smoothly along Route 234, slicing through the cool night air. The road stretched ahead like an endless ribbon of asphalt. Her thoughts were still tangled in the last classified case file when flashing red and blue lights lit up behind her. At first, she thought it was just another unit patrolling the highway. But when the cruiser didn't pass, when it stayed glued to her tail, doubt began to creep in. She checked the speedometer. 65 exactly. No swerving. No broken tail light. Nothing. Still, she eased to the side and came to a full stop on the shoulder. Years in law enforcement taught her not to panic. She knew the rules, knew the law. More importantly, she helped write them. The door behind her opened slowly. The officer took his time approaching. Too much time. She adjusted her rearview mirror, trying to catch his face. White male, mid-30s, big building, sunglasses at night pushed up on his head like a bad cop in a B-movie. His nameplate read, C. Riker. He walked like he owned the road. The flashlight beam hit her window before she could even greet him. She lowered her window halfway and kept both hands visible on the steering wheel. "Evening, officer," she said, calm but firm. Riker didn't respond. He just chewed his gum loudly, eyes trailing over her face a little too long. Then the order came. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation. She frowned slightly. "May I ask what I was stopped for?" "License, registration," he repeated, like a broken vending machine. Her instincts, honed over years in the field, kicked in. This wasn't routine. "Sir, I'm reaching for my purse in the passenger seat." She moved slowly, deliberately, and pulled out her wallet. With it, she handed over her driver's license, along with her badge and credentials. The FBI shield gleamed faintly in the glow of the streetlights. Riker didn't take it. He squinted, then chuckled. "FBI, huh?" She nodded once. "That's correct." There was a pause, then, "Step out of the vehicle," her eyebrows raised. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." She looked him dead in the eye. "On what grounds, officer?" His hand hovered near his gun now. "Suspicious behavior," he said flatly. Her grip on the wheel tightened. "You haven't explained what's suspicious." He leaned closer. "You ask a lot of questions for someone sitting on the side of the road." Brielle's voice didn't change, but the air in the car had. She could feel it now, the shift, the threat. Not implied, real. "I'm not refusing anything," she said. "I'm simply asking for protocol to be followed." Riker sneered. "Lady, you think flashing that badge means something out here? You're just another mouthy driver to me." Then came the bang. His hand slammed against the roof of her car so hard it echoed through her bones. The sudden violence of it stole the air from her lungs. Her training told her not to move, not to flinch. That would be exactly what he wanted. I said, "Get out." She looked at his nameplate again. Riker. She wouldn't forget it. Her voice was cold now, controlled. "You're violating federal protocol. I suggest you stop." He grinned. "Oh, you're one of those." Before she could say another word, a second cruiser pulled up behind his. Backup. A second officer, taller, heavier, stepped out and made his way over. No nameplate visible. His posture matched Riker's, aggressive. He didn't ask what was going on. He didn't speak to Brielle like a fellow law enforcement officer. He just stood behind Riker and said, "Problem here," Riker responded without taking his eyes off her. "Refusing to comply." "I didn't refuse anything," Brielle said clearly. "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle," the second officer ordered. "Ma'am, not Deputy Director, not Agent Monroe. Ma'am," she exhaled. This wasn't about law. This was about control, about her skin, about her voice, about her badge meaning nothing to men like them. She knew how fast things could go sideways, and she knew she was alone. Until she wasn't. Just as she cracked the door open, preparing to comply without lowering her guard, the world shifted again. That voice, clear and firm, rang out from beyond the glare of headlights. "I'm recording this." "Don't touch her." Riker spun toward the voice, gun still in hand. His stance faltered. Brielle turned slightly, just enough to see a man standing on the shoulder of the road. Mid-20s, hoodie, phone raised, steady hands. "Brave heart." "You sure you want to do this, officer?" the man said. "That's a federal badge she showed you. I got it all on camera." Riker's jaw clenched. The second officer shifted, uncertain now. Everything froze for a second. Brielle took it. She stepped fully out of the car, turned toward Riker, and said with unmistakable authority, "Put your weapon down. Now." Riker didn't move at first. Then he blinked. Behind him, the second officer's radio crackled. "Unit 32, report status. Backups en route." More sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Riker's fingers twitched. The man with the phone spoke again. "Go ahead, keep pointing that gun. I'll be famous tomorrow." Riker's arm wavered. The barrel lowered a fraction. Then Brielle delivered the line that cracked the tension wide open. "I am Deputy Director Brielle Monroe of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And if you don't holster that weapon right now, you're going to be detained by your own department if Internal Affairs doesn't get you first." The headlights of incoming cruisers lit up the highway like stage lights. Brielle stood tall, hands by her side, gaze locked on the officer still clinging to control he no longer had. Riker didn't even notice the squad cars stopping. He didn't hear the doors opening. He only snapped out of it when a voice behind him yelled, "Riker, drop the weapon." He hesitated. Too long. A pair of officers rushed him, yanked the gun from his hand, and pulled his arms behind his back. He thrashed once. "You can't do this. She was doing her job," one officer snapped. "You're the one in cuffs now." And just like that, the cop who thought he owned the road was being walked off it. Brielle didn't smile. She didn't smirk. She just exhaled slowly and turned to the young man with the phone. "You saved my life," she said. He lowered his phone. "No, ma'am. You saved your own. I just made sure the world could see it." Brielle nodded once. This wasn't over, not even close. The adrenaline hadn't worn off. Brielle Monroe stood on the side of the road, arms crossed, breath steady. But her mind was still burning. A few feet away, Officer Chad Riker sat cuffed in the back of a patrol car, red-faced and twitching with disbelief. The second officer, Travis Bell, leaned against the hood of his cruiser, his face pale as if he'd just realized the storm he was caught in. The other officers had formed a loose circle around the scene. Most of them kept their distance, whispering among themselves, throwing glances at Brielle, at Riker, at the civilian who'd filmed the whole thing. The young man, Marquis Thompson, still held his phone at his side, recording on instinct now more than anything else. He didn't want to miss a second, not until someone officially took his statement. Lieutenant Sandra Torres stepped forward, her boots crunching on the gravel. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a take-no-nonsense stance, Torres was the ranking officer on site. She stopped a few feet from Brielle and nodded. "Deputy Director Monroe, are you injured?" "No," Brielle replied, her tone clipped. "But we have a serious incident on our hands." Torres nodded again. "Understood. Internal Affairs has already been notified. We'll need your official statement." "You'll have it," Brielle said. "And I'll also need the dash cam footage from both cruisers. Body cams, too." Torres hesitated. "About that, Officer Riker's body cam wasn't active." Brielle's jaw clenched. "Convenient." "I agree," Torres said quietly. "We'll figure it out." Brielle looked past her toward Riker. The man was fuming, not with fear. He still didn't quite grasp what he had done. Or maybe he thought he'd find a way out of it, the way men like him always did. Torres followed her gaze. "He's not talking," she said. "Claims you flashed a fake badge, resisted orders." Brielle turned to face her. "You know that's not true." "I know," Torres said, "but it's going to get messy. Riker has friends on the force, the kind that know how to stir things up when they want to protect their own." "I'm not worried about his friends," Brielle replied. "I'm worried about the system that taught him he could pull a gun on a federal agent and still expect to walk away clean." The words hung in the air, heavy and bitter. Marquis stepped closer, his voice uncertain but clear. "Ma'am, do you need me to send the video somewhere? I've got the whole thing, from when he pulled the gun to when they cuffed him." Brielle turned to him. There was a tremor in his hand now, a crack in the calm he had held just moments earlier. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marquis Thompson. I was just heading home from work when I saw what was happening. Thought, I don't know. Something told me to stop." "You trusted your gut," she said. "That saved more than just me tonight." He looked down, then back up. "I've seen this before, just not with someone who could fight back." That line hit harder than he realized. Brielle swallowed the lump in her throat. "I'm going to make sure this goes all the way to the top," she told him. "But I'll need that footage. Don't post it yet. Not until I have a copy." "I got you," he said quickly. "I'll airdrop it or email, whatever you need." Brielle gave him her secure contact. He nodded and stepped aside, phone already pulling up the file. Torres cleared her throat. "Director, Riker's captain is on the way. He's demanding to speak with you." Brielle raised an eyebrow. "Good. I have a few things I'd like to say to him, too." A black SUV pulled up just then, unmarked but familiar. Brielle recognized the driver, Special Agent Daniel Holt, part of her security detail. She hadn't called him, which meant someone else had. He stepped out and moved quickly toward her, eyes scanning the scene. "Ma'am," he said, "you all right?" "I'm fine. Who called you?" "Justice Department. Word's already spreading." Brielle blinked. That was fast. "Is the director aware?" "He will be, if he's not already." Behind them, Riker started shouting from the patrol car. "This is a setup. She was provoking me. You're all gonna regret this." No one responded. Torres motioned to the officer beside the cruiser. "Shut the door." The officer obeyed, muting Riker's voice to a muffled mess of curses. Brielle took a slow breath. Holt stepped closer. "They're not going to let this go quietly," he said. "You're shaking up the department just by standing here." "Let them shake," she said. "It's time someone did." Torres checked her radio, then turned back to Brielle. Internal Affairs will handle custody of both officers. I'll oversee the transfer myself. But I need you to know, Director, Riker's not a rookie. He's got connections. Brielle met her eyes. Then it's time those connections get exposed. There was no fear in her voice, no hesitation, just steel. This wasn't about personal vengeance. It wasn't even about Riker, not really. This was about all the drivers who couldn't flash a badge, all the voices that never got heard, and the fight was just beginning. By the time Brielle Monroe arrived at the FBI field office in Arlington the next morning, the air was already thick with noise. News vans lined the sidewalk, agents whispered in corners, screens in the briefing room flashed headlines. FBI Deputy Director threatened at gunpoint during traffic stop. Officer detains Black FBI agent in apparent abuse of power. The footage had leaked overnight. Not from her, someone inside the local precinct had sent it to the press. Maybe a whistleblower. Maybe someone trying to twist the narrative. Either way, the story was out, and the damage control machine had started turning. But Brielle wasn't here to play cleanup. She stepped into the operations room, her heels striking the floor with purpose. Agent Holt was already waiting near the conference table, flanked by two other members of her trusted team, Special Agents Renee Santiago and Tom Mitchell. "You're trending," Mitchell said with a dry shake of his head. "Not what I was aiming for," Brielle replied. Renee, ever sharp, had a file already prepped. Riker's file, as requested. We pulled every complaint, every suspension, every incident report. Brielle opened it and stopped. 4 prior complaints for use of excessive force, 3 for misconduct, all quietly dismissed, one of them by the captain who showed up last night. Captain Alan Briggs, Renee confirmed, friend of Riker's, served together for over a decade. "No surprise there," Brielle muttered. "Birds of a feather." Tom leaned in. "Here's where it gets interesting. Last year, Briggs fast-tracked Riker's promotion eligibility, and 6 months ago, he helped bury an internal investigation after Riker allegedly roughed up a Latino teenager during a traffic stop. No video, no witness, just vanished. Until now, Brielle said. They got away with it because no one was watching. Not this time, Holt said. She flipped through the rest of the file, every page heavier than the last. This wasn't just one bad cop. This was a pattern. Protected. Enabled. Santiago pulled up a feed on the screen. Press conference in 10 minutes. DOJ is already signaling they want a joint investigation. They can want whatever they like, Brielle replied. I'm leading this. There was a moment of silence in the room. Then Holt stepped forward. We also have something else. Marcus Thompson, the civilian who filmed everything. He's been getting threats. Brielle's eyes narrowed. From who? Anonymous numbers. DMS. Someone followed him to work this morning. He filed a report, but the local department didn't assign protection. She didn't answer right away. Her hands clenched at her sides. They're trying to silence him, she said. Make an example. Tom nodded. But he's not backing down, said he wants to speak out. On the record, Brielle considered that for a moment. Then she made a decision. Get him here, today. We'll give him federal protection. And I want him present when I speak to Internal Affairs. Let them see exactly who they tried to intimidate. Outside, the conference room buzzed with reporters preparing for the briefing. But inside, something colder was building. Renee leaned closer, voice low. There's more. The footage? It's gone viral, but someone's trying to twist it. There's a fake version circulating, edited to make it look like you reached for something. Brielle blinked. Who posted it? Anonymous account, but we traced the IP to a private server in the precinct. Someone's running interference. Her jaw clenched. A cover-up, fast and dirty. Tom muttered, They're scared. Good, Brielle said. Let them be. She straightened up and looked toward the door. I want every piece of that department's body cam data. Every cruiser dash cam. I want full records on both Riker and Briggs. I want the union lawyer present. And I want the head of internal affairs to meet me here by noon. Holt raised an eyebrow. You expecting a fight? No, she said. I'm expecting war. Just then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Monroe. A voice, gruff and familiar, came through. This is Captain Briggs. We need to talk. Off the record. She paused. Do we? I'm trying to help you, he said. No, she replied coolly. You're trying to save your own skin. I can make this go away, he said quickly. If you back off Riker, I can spin this. Say it was confusion, miscommunication. I'll even offer a public apology. Brielle's voice turned to steel. You pointed a gun at the wrong woman, Captain, and now the country knows it. He was silent. Then she added, This doesn't go away. But you might, if you step aside and let the truth come out. Click. She hung up. When she turned back to her team, no one spoke. They didn't need to. The line had been drawn, and Brielle Monroe was done playing defense. Brielle stood in the glass-paneled conference room at FBI headquarters, watching Marky Thompson nervously sip coffee from a paper cup. He sat at the far end of the table, a hoodie pulled tight over his head, eyes darting around the room like he was waiting for someone to jump out from the shadows. For a man who had stood his ground the night before, phone steady, voice calm, he now looked like someone who'd seen just how real the consequences could get. You okay? Brielle asked gently, walking toward him. He nodded, then shook his head. I don't know. I thought I was. But I woke up to a brick through my window. No note, just glass everywhere. My mom freaked. You're under federal protection now. That's not just words, Marquise. We're taking this seriously. He met her gaze. Are they? Because the local cops still haven't come by to take a statement. They won't return my calls. I called 911 and they transferred me to voicemail. Brielle's jaw clenched. They're stonewalling, trying to send a message. Well, message received, he muttered. Loud and clear. Brielle sat across from him. You saved my life. I meant it when I said that. But this is bigger than just me now. Bigger than you, too. I didn't ask for any of this. I know, she said softly, but sometimes history doesn't wait for permission. He gave a half laugh, half sigh. I just filmed a traffic stop. No, you documented abuse of power, she corrected. And now we use that truth to dismantle the machine that lets it happen. There was a knock at the door. Agent Santiago poked her head in. They're here, Brielle stood. Bring them in. A moment later, 3 men walked in. The first was Internal Affairs Chief Wendell Price, short, sharp, with icy blue eyes that scanned the room like a hawk looking for weakness. Beside him, Captain Briggs, freshly pressed uniform, face flushed with tightly held anger. The third man wore a cheap suit and a smirk, Riker's union attorney, Miles Carter. None of them acknowledged Marquise. They didn't have to. Their posture said it all. Brielle motioned to the seats. Price sat. Briggs hesitated, then followed. Carter didn't even pretend to be polite. Let's skip the pleasantries, he said, placing a folder on the table. We're here because a situation got out of hand. My client acted under stress. Confusion. It was late, dark. He didn't recognize your clients. Client, Brielle cut in, raising an eyebrow. Deputy Director Monroe, Carter corrected with a thin smile. Apologies. What I meant was, this was a misunderstanding. We're prepared to offer a formal apology, but we'd prefer to handle this quietly. Price added, We've reviewed the footage, both official and unofficial. There's clearly tension, but no physical harm occurred. Perhaps we can classify this as a procedural misstep. Briggs finally spoke. Riker's career doesn't need to be ruined over a bad call. Brielle leaned forward. He pulled a gun on a federal officer. That's not a bad call. That's a felony. Intent matters, Carter said quickly. And his intent wasn't malicious. He held me at gunpoint because I'm a black woman driving a nice car at night. That's not lack of intent. That's learned behavior. The room went quiet. Marquis shifted in his seat, finally speaking. I was there. I saw it all. He wasn't confused. He was in control until he realized someone was watching. Carter laughed under his breath. With all due respect, you're not law enforcement. You don't understand how fast these things escalate. Marquis didn't flinch. Number. But I understand fear. I've felt it every time I've been pulled over. And last night I saw that same fear in her eyes. He pointed to Brielle. And for the first time, the badge didn't protect her either. Briggs scoffed. We're not here for a TED Talk. We're here to resolve this. Brielle stood up slowly. Number, you're here because the system you represent got caught doing exactly what people have accused it of for years. And now, for once, someone has to answer for it. She turned to Price. You're IA. Your job is to investigate internal misconduct. So start investigating. Pull the logs, check Riker's history, dig into Briggs' role in protecting him. If you don't, I will. Publicly. Price shifted uncomfortably. Deputy Director, with all due respect. With all due respect, she cut in, you don't get to sit here and pretend this is about one bad night. This is about years of silence. This is about how many reports never made it past your desk. Carter stood, gathering his files. If that's how you want to play it, we'll see you in court. You will, Brielle said flatly, and I'll be on the stand. They walked out, one by one. Price was last to leave. He paused in the doorway, then said quietly, This won't be easy. Neither is justice, Brielle replied. When the room was empty, Brielle turned to Marquis. You did good. I just told the truth. She smiled. Exactly. But inside, she knew the real battle was only beginning, because the deeper she dug, the more dangerous it would get. And she was ready. Brielle Monroe stood in the center of her office, staring at a sealed manila envelope she hadn't asked for. It was left on her desk without a name, no return address, just a red stamp on the back that read, Confidential. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she studied it like it might bite. Agent Holt stepped in moments later, catching the tension in the air instantly. That from one of ours? She shook her head. Came in with this morning's mail. No ID. Hand-delivered. Could be a threat. Or a warning. He closed the door quietly behind him as she opened the flap and pulled out the contents. At first, she didn't react. Just flipped through the documents with an unreadable expression. Personnel files, internal complaints, digital logs, photocopies of signed statements from officers in Riker's department. But it wasn't the paperwork that made her pulse spike. It was the photographs. She laid them across her desk like puzzle pieces. Riker, Briggs, a third man, white, older, heavy-set, sitting across from them at a bar known to be frequented by off-duty cops. Another shot. That same man with a teenage boy, handcuffed, bruised, being shoved into a patrol car. No report on record, no arrest log. This kid, she muttered. He never even made it to booking. Holt stepped closer. That's the same date Riker's squad logged a routine traffic incident. And yet, no file, no body cam, no dash footage. Brielle clenched her jaw. This is a pattern. This kid disappeared. The photos prove he was in their custody. What's the play here? Holt asked. Someone drops this on your desk, anonymously, knowing it could blow everything open. Someone wants this out, she said, but not through official channels. which means they don't trust the system either. He gave a grim nod. You think the third guy's a cop? Worse, I think he's internal affairs. That landed like a punch. Holt didn't respond right away. If that's true, then this whole thing is deeper than we thought. It always was. Her phone rang before she could say more. It was Renee. You need to see this. Now. 10 minutes later, they were in the conference room, screens lit up with a grainy video. This one not from Marcus' phone, but security footage from a gas station 2 blocks from the highway where Brielle had been stopped. The timestamp matched. The footage showed Riker's cruiser pulling in before the stop ever happened, then him speaking to another man. The same third man from the photos. No sound, but body language said enough. Riker was nodding, taking something from the man, pocketing it. What the hell did he hand him? Holt asked. Renee zoomed in, adjusted contrast. It looks like a phone. Or maybe a camera device. Could have been the jammer, Brielle said. We never figured out why my car's internal recording system failed that night. Someone helped him, Renee muttered. Planned it. Someone with resources. And reason. Brielle's stomach twisted. She turned to Holt. Pull every disciplinary record from the IA division in Riker's precinct. I want to know who's been covering for who. Renee hesitated. There's more. Someone's been trying to access your personnel file from an external terminal. Brielle blinked. Excuse me. Last night, 2:37 a.m., flagged by cybersecurity. They tried to scrub your clearance level, erase your title. If they had succeeded and someone ran your credentials during the stop, it would have looked fake. A silence fell over the room. Someone had tried to erase her. Not just discredit her, but digitally wipe her status. If Riker had pulled that record, he might have seen her as a fraud, a target. Brielle felt heat rising in her chest, not fear, but fury. This isn't just about Riker. Someone higher up wanted this to go exactly how it went. Renee nodded. Someone's scared of what you're about to find. And they should be. Her voice was quiet but sharp. She turned to Holt. Get me in touch with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We're opening a federal corruption probe. You sure? Holt asked. No, she said. But I'm done waiting for proof to come gift-wrapped. If someone's coming for me, I'm going to make damn sure I hit back first. As she turned back to the photos on her desk, the one of the bruised teenage boy stopped her cold. There was a name scribbled on the back in faded ink. Derek Sims. She didn't recognize it, but she would, because someone wanted her to, and she intended to find out why. Brielle Monroe sat at the long mahogany table inside the U.S. Attorney's office, the weight of everything she'd uncovered sitting heavy on her chest. The files, the footage, the boy's name, Derek Sims. It all pointed to one undeniable truth. Riker's traffic stop wasn't random. It was part of a pattern, and someone with authority had been pulling strings. Across the table sat U.S. Attorney Miriam Haynes, sharp-witted and meticulous, not the type to be easily rattled. But even she had leaned back after reading through the photos and reports Brielle handed over. This kid, Haynes said, tapping Derek's file. He vanished? Not officially, Brielle replied. There's no death certificate, no missing persons report. But we traced his last known location to the back of a patrol car. Same night, Riker filed a blank incident log. And IA buried it. Or worse, used it. Haynes looked up. You think Internal Affairs was involved in covering this up? I think they helped orchestrate it, Brielle said. And now they're trying to bury me the same way. There was a pause as Haynes processed it. Then she exhaled and pushed the file aside. You're asking for a full-blown corruption probe. You realize what that means? Political blowback, media hellstorm. This department will be under a microscope. I'm not asking, Brielle said quietly. I'm telling you, this rot runs deep, and if we don't cut it out now, we're just giving them permission to keep going." Haynes didn't respond, but she didn't say no. An hour later, back at headquarters, Brielle walked through the bullpen like a storm on legs. Agents moved aside. She didn't stop until she reached Renee Santiago's desk. "Pull all known addresses tied to Derek Sims, schools, shelters, emergency contacts. I want his last year mapped out hour by hour." Renee nodded, already typing. "And notify Holt. Tell him to meet me in the parking garage in 10. 10 minutes later, they were on the road. They drove in silence at first, the city blurring past them in a haze of steel and shadow. "You think he's alive?" Holt finally asked. "I don't know," Brielle admitted. "But someone left those photos on my desk for a reason. Somebody out there still wants this scene." They pulled up to a dilapidated apartment complex in southeast D.C., one of the addresses tied to Derek. The place was run down, half the windows boarded up, paint peeling off the siding. Kids played in the street with a flat basketball. No one made eye contact. Brielle flashed her badge at the building manager, a wiry woman with tired eyes and a smoker's rasp. "Derek Sims?" the woman repeated. "Yeah, I remember him. Sweet kid, real quiet. Lived with his uncle." "Where's the uncle now?" Brielle asked. "Died last year. Overdose. After that, Derek just disappeared. One night, cops showed up. Said he was in trouble. Never saw him again." "Did you get names, badge numbers?" The woman shook her head. "Didn't ask. You don't ask questions around here if you want to stay breathing." Brielle nodded, handed over a card. "If you remember anything, call me. Doesn't matter what time." Back in the car, Holt looked over. "She's scared." "They all are," Brielle said. "That's how these men operate. They count on silence." As they drove off, Brielle's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. She answered. A low voice came through, distorted but clear enough to understand. "If you want answers, look at the old juvenile facility on Braxton Hill. 3rd floor. But don't come alone." Click. The line went dead. She stared at the screen. "You get that?" Holt asked. "Yeah," she said, already turning the wheel. 30 minutes later, they stood outside the long-abandoned Braxton Hill Youth Center. The building was wrapped in rusted chain-link fence, windows shattered, vines crawling up the brick. "This place hasn't been active in years," Holt muttered. "Exactly," Brielle said. "Perfect spot for something no one's supposed to see." They broke through the fence and stepped into the building, flashlights cutting through the dust and rot. The 3rd floor was a maze of empty rooms, graffiti-covered walls and mold. Then they found it. A room near the far end. Inside, old records, boxes stacked high, forgotten files yellowing with age. Brielle pulled one down, blew off the dust, and opened it. Derek Sims, juvenile detention intake form. Date: 2 weeks after the incident with Riker. No release date. Her hands trembled slightly. Another box, more names, all young, all black or Latino, dozens of intake forms, none with matching release records. Holt cursed under his breath. They were funneling these kids through the system, Brielle said, her voice barely above a whisper, and disappearing them. It wasn't just Riker. It wasn't just Briggs. This was organized, and it had just become something far darker than she'd imagined. She turned to Holt. "We're not investigating misconduct anymore." "No," he said grimly. "We're looking at human trafficking." Brielle's stomach dropped. This was no longer about justice for herself. This was about saving whoever was still out there, and making damn sure the ones behind it never walked free again. The walls of the FBI command center were alive with movement. Digital screens displayed files, maps, timestamps. Phone lines buzzed. Agents spoke in clipped tones, weaving between desks like a choreographed storm. In the center of it all, Brielle Monroe stood still, her hands resting on the edge of the operations table. Her eyes were locked on a printed list. Names, ages, case numbers, all of them tied to the abandoned juvenile facility on Braxton Hill. None of them had ever been reported released. She had seen some dark things in her career: cartel executions, domestic terror cells, international black markets. But this was something else. Someone had built a system to vanish kids, and they'd been doing it for years. Holt approached with his phone in hand, jaw clenched. "We got the trace on that burner phone from earlier, the one that tipped us off about the facility." "Where did it ping from?" "Fairfax, an address tied to— You're not gonna believe this." He handed her the file. Her eyes scanned it. Wendell Price, Internal Affairs Chief. The same man who had sat across from her just days ago, calmly deflecting questions, pretending to be on her side. Brielle's stomach flipped. "He's not just covering it up," she said. "He's running it." Before Holt could respond, Agent Renee Santiago burst in. "You need to see this." She led them into the adjoining surveillance room and pulled up a live security feed. "Price is here. He just badged in 5 minutes ago. He's in the evidence archive room." Brielle didn't hesitate. She moved fast, Holt on her heels, badge in hand as they stormed down the corridor. When they reached the archive room, the door was slightly ajar. Inside, Price stood over a shredder, feeding in files one after another. He didn't even flinch when the door slammed open. "Step away from the machine," Brielle commanded. Price turned, calm as ever. "Director Monroe," he said. "I was just doing a bit of cleanup." "Hands where I can see them," Holt barked. Price raised his hands slowly, but the smugness never left his face. "Do you have any idea what you're stepping into?" he asked. "Do you?" Brielle walked toward him, eyes blazing. "You've been orchestrating the disappearance of minors under the guise of discipline and selling access to them like property. That's not a system. That's a damn racket." "Be careful what you accuse me of," he said evenly. "You start throwing words like that around, people will wonder why a newly appointed black deputy director is suddenly taking down half the department." Brielle stopped a foot away from him. "Oh, they're not wondering. They're watching. Every move, every step. And I promise you this is going to blow up far beyond the press conference you're hoping to avoid." From behind her, Holt muttered into his comms. "Secure archive room. We need forensics in here. Now." Price dropped the comm. "You think this ends with me?" he said, voice rising. "You're in over your head. You don't know how deep this goes." "Then let's find out together," Brielle replied coldly. Officers stormed the room. Price didn't resist, but as they cuffed him, he gave one final smile. "You won't survive this." Brielle leaned in close. "I already did." Outside the room, the hallway buzzed with agents mobilizing, hands flying over keyboards, phones ringing. Marquis Thompson waited at the end of the corridor. He had insisted on coming, had told her he didn't want to watch from the sidelines. "What now?" he asked quietly as she approached. "Now we take it public," she said. That evening, Brielle stood behind a podium at the Justice Department. The room was packed, cameras rolled, the world was watching. She didn't speak with anger. She didn't need to. Her presence, her calm, her precision, it all spoke louder than rage ever could. "I was pulled over not because I broke the law, but because someone believed I didn't belong where I was. And when I showed my badge, that wasn't enough. Because the problem isn't just one officer. It's an entire system that protects the worst of us and punishes those who speak out." She paused, letting it settle. "But that ends now." A ripple moved through the room. In cooperation with the U.S. Attorney's Office, we are launching a federal investigation into organized corruption within law enforcement, specifically targeting misconduct and exploitation within juvenile detention systems. She looked directly at the cameras. No badge, no title, and no system will shield those responsible from justice. The room erupted in questions. She didn't answer a single one. She stepped away from the podium, head high. In the hallway, Holt approached, phone in hand. They're scrambling. Briggs is lawyering up. Riker's trying to make a deal. Everyone's turning on each other. Let them, Brielle said. Price, processing, and singing. He handed her the phone. A new video was playing, footage from Braxton Hill, kids in a holding room, names called off a list, guards directing them to unmarked vans. Her hand trembled as she hit pause. There's more, Holt said. We found Derek. Brielle froze. He's alive? In a shelter in Delaware, under a fake name. He ran, hid for years, but he saw your press conference. He wants to talk. She looked at the screen again. She didn't cry. She breathed. For the first time in days, she breathed. And she knew. This fight wasn't over, but she was finally winning. The small room at the Delaware shelter was quiet, the kind of stillness that only came after years of chaos. Derek Sims sat across from Brielle Monroe, eyes down, fingers twitching against the table. He looked older than his age, 17 going on 40. But when he finally looked up, there was a clarity in his gaze that silenced the room. You're the one they tried to get rid of too, he said. Brielle gave a soft nod. They didn't succeed. Neither had he. Derek had survived. That alone made him powerful. He slid a worn journal across the table, pages filled with names, notes, dates, kids who'd vanished, guards who'd watched, routes that had become ritual. I wrote everything down, he said. I didn't think it would matter. But now, maybe it does. It does, Brielle said. You matter. Behind the glass, Holt and Agent Santiago observed silently. No cameras, no reporters, just truth being passed hand to hand. Derek leaned in. They moved us around at night. Vans, no plates. They said it was for security, but we never came back. I only got out because one of the drivers recognized me. He used to live on my block. Told me to run. Said if I ever said anything, they'd find me. Brielle's voice was steady. They won't. Not anymore. Later that evening, the Justice Department released a public statement. Dozens of arrests made, records unsealed, multiple officers and officials placed under federal indictment, including Internal Affairs Chief Wendell Price and Captain Alan Briggs. Riker, now fully cooperating, had confessed to moving kids under orders. But the real damage was systemic, and finally being acknowledged. Brielle watched the news from her office. Headlines scrolled like victory banners, but she knew the real work had only just begun. A knock broke her thoughts. Marquis Thompson stepped in, wearing a crisp navy blazer, far removed from the hoodie and shaken eyes of that night on the roadside. You clean up well, Brielle said with a smile. Figured if I'm going to stand next to the FBI, I should at least pretend I belong. You don't have to pretend, she said. You earned it. He sat beside her, quiet for a moment. They asked me to speak on that panel next week. Youth reform and policing. Said you recommended me. I did. He looked down. What if I mess it up? You stood between a man with a gun and the truth. You didn't flinch. That's not something you can fake. People need to hear your voice, Marcus. Especially now. He nodded slowly. Derek's going to be there too. You know that? I do, she said. And you won't be the only ones. In the weeks that followed, the fallout spread like wildfire. Congressional hearings were held. State departments nationwide opened their own internal reviews. The juvenile system was under scrutiny like never before. Reforms were introduced. Some resisted, others embraced. Brielle stood in front of the Senate Oversight Committee and didn't mince words. This isn't about one department. It's about the silence we've allowed to grow. About the voices we chose not to hear, the kids we decided didn't matter. Until now. After her testimony, she stepped outside into the bright midday sun. Marquis waited on the steps, holding his phone. "Another video?" she teased. He grinned. "Nah, this one's just for me." He raised the camera and snapped a photo of her standing tall, the Capitol behind her. "You sure you want to keep doing this?" he asked. Brielle looked out at the city, at the world still full of broken pieces and unfinished battles. "I don't have a choice," she said, "and neither do you." That night, Brielle returned to her apartment. She poured a cup of tea, sat on the couch, and finally, let herself breathe. The road ahead would still be long, but something had shifted, not because she had power, but because she had used it. As the screen dimmed, she opened her laptop and typed a message to her team. "Keep watching, keep recording, keep fighting, because silence is where injustice thrives, and we're done being silent." And to everyone reading this now, if this story moved you, share it, speak up, don't look away. Because justice doesn't happen in secret. It happens when people refuse to be silent. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories that expose injustice, celebrate truth, and fight for change. Your voice matters. Make it count.